and welcome back. My name is Allison and I like to watch horror movies. I also like to rant about them, and today we are going to be ranting about Yellow Brick Road. This is a horror movie that was released in 2010, directed by Jesse Holland and Andy Mitton. If you are new here, consider this your warning. What we do on this channel is we talk about movie plots and we talk about the entire plot of the movie. So if you don't like spoilers, if that's not your thing, you can click on the timestamp that should be down in the description below. That can take you to my review. But fair warning on this, I sometimes do forget myself and lose my filter in that as well. So I don't make a lot of promises. With that out of the way, let's get into it. This is my breakdown of the movie for people that don't like to watch horror movies, but do like to talk about them. This is not the first time I have watched this movie, and it remains one of my favorite psychological horror movies. It is this slow crawl towards insanity that leaves the audience with no more answers than the characters in the movie have. And that is one thing that I really like when movies do. I like to guess at things. I don't like all of the answers spoon-fed to me. And so I'm really excited to talk about this with you guys. The context of Yellow Brick Road is that in 1940, the entire town of Friar, 572 people, abandoned their town and all of their belongings and wandered into the wilderness outside of town with only the clothes on their back after a viewing of The Wizard of Oz. I can tell you right now that The Wizard of Oz does become somewhat of a theme throughout the movie. It is not a Wizard of Oz movie, but this does come back around. So just something to sort of have at the back of your noggin, I guess. After we get this information, we see/hear an interview with supposedly the only person that comes back from this alive, but we don't really get anything coherent from her. We get a lot of screaming and sobbing and fear into the camera of the person that is interviewing them. Numbers wise, we are told that only 300 of the 572 bodies of people were recovered. There isn't really a theory or anything that we get here, just that like they vanished and that's it. The bodies are just gone. That's all we know. Although the town did repopulate, the trail that these few hundred people followed is classified by the government. They locked that shit down. They're like, we do not want people following that. We are going to keep that hidden from y'all. Jump to present day. The trail coordinates have been declassified. We open up the movie in earnest with what is going to be considered the main character of the movie in a building trying to like get stuff ready to go explore the trail. He wants to know what happened to these people, and he wants to know why they explored the trail. They want to, quote, travel the trail to learn about the disappearances and deaths, as well as what lies at the end of the trail. And there is a lot of this end/center of the trail, but there's also a lot of people want to know why. Like, why did these people get up and abandon their homes and abandon all of their stuff and like walk out into the wilderness to the death? So that is the mindset of the main character walking into the movie. He has with him a crew that he's taking with on this adventure. This crew includes Teddy, the main character, Teddy's wife, Melissa, their collaborator, Walter, and Walter's job is to have like video cameras along the way. Sibling cartographers Daryl and Aaron Luger By the way, they're the only people that get last names in the whole movie. Forestry expert Cy and intern Jill. Most often in the movie, they don't just say Jill, they're calling out intern Jill and kind of making fun of her. But that is the crew going into the movie. We see them meet up at this town of Friar. They're like ready to go. They have all of their stuff together. They have vehicles. They have these coordinates, and they have this fancy device that tells them like what coordinates they're at, like a GPS type thing that intern Jill is responsible for. This device brings them to what is supposed to be the trailhead. Instead of the beginning of a trail, they are at the town's movie theater. The mood very much shifts already in the movie to this is a bus. Clearly we were given bad coordinates. Clearly they were not really declassified. People are just sending out phony, like, trolling information. But they don't head home yet. Instead, they go inside the movie theater. In there, they're trying to talk to people, but the dude behind the ticket booth glass is completely stonewalling them, just uninterested in giving information. And they speculate that no one in the town is going to give them information. They speculate that that's like how things run there, that they instructed not to tell people anything. And to a certain extent, that does make sense. I wouldn't tell people either how to go down this trail that's like this weird stain on your town and like shitty tourists and stuff. So, after this guy decides not to give them information, the majority of the crew walks back outside. They're like, let's pack it up. There's nothing to do here. We're going to go home. And not Teddy. Teddy stands there at this booth, and he tries to talk to the guy for like 2 seconds more, but then he turns his attention to the side and he watches this other employee get herself a drink. He watches her get some popcorn, and like she side eyes him a little bit, I guess. He watches her walk into one of the theaters, and then he slaps like a 20 down on the counter for the ticket taker who has wandered off somewhere else. And Teddy walks into this theater with this woman. I have a feeling or two here, because she was not like signaling him, well, come on in here, I will talk to you. He just like follows her. Anyways, it turns out okay. The employee, a woman named Liv, is someone that lives in the town. They watch this movie for a little bit, and they are talking about the trail. They're talking about the town of Friar and these people that left. And she says that her grandfather was one of these people that went on this trail. And Liv convinces Teddy to let her come with. She says, you know, I have family. I live here. It's in my blood. I have camping equipment. I'm ready to go. If you want information, just let me come with you. And I don't view this as a good idea. And the rest of the crew later does not view this as a good idea. But Teddy gives the thumbs up. He says, yes, Liv, show us where to go. And like, give us information about your grandpa and the people that walked this path. They do find the actual start of the trail. They don't show us how they found the start of the trail. We go from this movie theater scene to the wilderness, but they find the start of the trail, and things go fine for a little while. The first night or two, they are in good spirits. They're walking along. They have lots of equipment. They are taking down coordinates, and things are going great. It doesn't take very long though, once they're like really moving along this trail, for things to start to change. They start to hear music. And this is not from a phone. It's not from a radio. It's not from like a Walkman. No, this music is on the air. It's from the earth. It's in the atmosphere, this music. And it's loud enough for all of them to hear it, clear as day. But it is not loud enough for us to hear it. Or I mean, like, for it to be deafening to the audience. It is at a tolerable level. But they have no idea where it's coming from. They have like speculation, but really it's just a strange thing that's happening that they kind of have to tolerate. From the beginning of their adventure, we do see one of the crew members filming. The collaborator is filming the fellow crew members. He's asking them questions to see how they're doing mentally. So he's asking them, what's your earliest childhood memory? Speak in gibberish for 10 seconds until I tell you to stop. What fruit does the color red make you think of? And this is to sort of calibrate how they are feeling and how they're doing as the journey goes along. Like at the beginning, everyone is passing with flying colors, and that is I know that right now you are like mentally stable, you are here, you are good, and I can measure that as we go along. After the music starts and settles in, people start to look and act a bit more shaken up about the trip. It's nothing that they can really put their hands on, and I don't think it's anything that the audience can really put their hands on either. Just that things don't feel quite right. Some of them start to answer those questions a little bit differently for our collaborator, and that starts to be noticed. He catches someone saying that their earliest childhood memory is actually at the start of the trail. And they just sort of start to feel strange things around them. Not like ghosts or anything like that, but they start to feel the trail affecting them. Again, it is unclear if it's the trail or the music or something else, but we do know that they're starting to act different. They're trying to guess where the music is coming from, but they are failing because they don't have any way to confirm that information. Some of them do speculate that it's coming from the center of the trail, but of course they don't know. It comes and goes, distinct but not horribly loud, like I talked about. The crew, a couple nights in, they decide to blow off steam. And they do this because one of the crew members has this like jug of alcohol that at first folks are like, you're not supposed to have that. Why did you bring that? That is bad. And then they like give in and they're like, yes. I think what we do need is a drunken night out in the wilderness where we can just blow off steam because things are feeling kind of funny and we would like to feel fun. We just want to have a good night. In this scene where they're deciding to have the drinks, they're like setting up camp and whatever. We do see Sai, our forestry expert, knock some berries out of one of their hands. One of them is like sitting there with berries. And Sai comes up and he's like, do not eat these berries. He takes them away, makes everyone look at them. And he's like, I need you to see the difference between these berries. Excuse me. I need you to see the difference between these berries and all of the other berries that are actually good to eat. He makes like a really big stink about it. Anyways, they have their night of fun and the camera work, they get a little bit artsy. They're showing like pictures of the fire and sparks and sort of more stills and just voiceovers at this point. The next day, though, they are traveling again. They pause partway through the day for the siblings to take coordinates. And by take coordinates, what I mean is that the two siblings will separate from the group and they have equipment that they like go up on a hill and they are like, I don't know, using whatever it is they have. They're like cameras and compasses and stuff to take measurements. This scene is where the movie takes a sharp turn. The whole setup here is that there is this slow descent into madness that I talked about, that there's nothing that you can really put your finger on that is happening, that is changing, but you can tell that these people are not quite feeling all there, that things feel off, that things are starting to feel different. But this scene, that changes entirely. It's not a slow, uncertain crawl. We are smacked in the face with the fact that this group is not really okay. We get a glimpse that maybe things aren't going the way that they want. I mean, even worse than we already did know. They do talk before this about turning around, and they take a vote, but they decide to keep going anyways. And a big part of this is our main character. It is Teddy. He is obsessed with this trail. It is all he's thinking about is getting to the end of the trail, getting to the center of the trail. So the scene in question, where the movie takes a shift from this slow, subtle crawl to a yes, we are in a horror movie. They go up a hill to take measurements. The sister can't see through her like camera equipment or whatever, and the brother, Daryl, starts accusing her of scratching the lens. She's denying it and getting frustrated. And the way that she takes this out is she starts yelling at Daryl to take this hat off his head. It's a hat that they found at like the beginning of the trail that he's been wearing the entire time. She finds it creepy. She doesn't like it. And it bursts. She's like, I need you to take the hat off already. He says no. She takes the hat from him and starts like running around this hill trying to keep it from him, and he is fighting back. He is angry and he catches up to her and he starts like clawing at her, and we can't 100% see what's happening. Things are moving a little bit fast. We're kind of zooming into them and then pulling back to where everyone else is. But we do see that the situation escalates. How does it escalate? He starts like punching her and like elbow dropping her and clawing at her body. He's like real pissed off. And warning here, unlike the spoiler warning at the beginning, this is a warning that this scene is gory. It's really the only super gory scene in the movie, as most of it is people just sort of slowly losing their minds. But this scene is something special. And special is not quite the right word here, but it's the word that we're going to go with. The brother proceeds to rip her leg off with his bare hands at the thigh. He rips it off of her body, and of course the woman is screaming about it, but mostly just kind of laying there. She is powerless to do anything about him. She cannot overpower him. She has just lost, and she's kind of like, yes, I lose. But also, yes, this is happening. My leg is getting ripped off. What the fuck? The scene is brutal, and there's no other way about it. So, towards the end of this fight, we do see the other crew members start to notice that something is happening up there on the hill. And they pick up a pair of binoculars and they look on, and you might think that they see this happening and they run in and try to stop it. But they do not do that. They just watch with the binoculars. They watch this woman lose her leg. And while they're watching, we do get these two gems. The person in the binocular, he says to the group, he killed her. He ripped her apart, like screaming, and it's not funny. But like, yes, duh. And then also one of them turned to the group and they're like, "There's been a terrible tragedy." Also, yes, duh, yes, there has in fact been a terrible tragedy. What was your first clue? Excuse me. Anyways, Daryl, their brother sibling, sort of realizes what he has done. He looks over, he sees people watching, he looks down at his sister, and he's like, I have this is not good. So he runs away into the trees. The group agrees, having watched this and having watched him run off, that he needs to be found. So two of the men go and chase after Daryl to bring him back. While they're doing that, the rest of the crew decides to try to handle the dead body. They try to dig a grave unsuccessfully. They don't really get very far in that. Presumably the ground is too hard. They don't have digging equipment. That's not why they're there. So one of the women grab a piece of clothing, like a sweater or something, and use it as sort of like a red flag to put near the dead body as a signal to be like, it is here. This marks where this person was. But I feel like even at this point, even though they have marked the body, the reason that no one else bothered to mark it in this way is because they're not coming back. They're never coming back to that spot. Things are truly out of their hands. They're out of control. And I think they just are not 100% admitting it yet. The two men do find Daryl. And when they find Daryl, he is ready to admit that he has messed up and he has done a bad thing. And he, like, willingly goes back to the camp. He lets them tie his hands together and they walk back to the rest of the crew. Teddy does get Daryl alone, though. And this is something that the group had planned on Teddy being able to do, because at this point they have decided that they'd like to go back. They're like, we are done. We've had enough. We would like to go home now, please. We would like to not be in this insane place with this insane stuff happening. We are clearly not all there. Daryl just ripped someone's leg off. Let's go home. But they don't know how. The only people that know how to get home are Daryl and his sister. And his sister is gone, so they need Daryl to explain the coordinates in their journals. Unfortunately, Daryl tells them that it is basically impossible to tell them how to get home. Daryl starts talking about how they were trying. They would look back at something that should have been 10 miles away, a campfire from 20 hours ago, and it would be like less than a mile in their sights, or that like there were curves or thoroughfares that shouldn't be there. Daryl tells them that they were looking forward the whole time and those coordinates made sense, but looking back, nothing made sense. Like the trail was changing around them. What Daryl does tell Teddy, though, is that they did figure out the middle. He says, we figured out the end of the trail. We figured out, not the middle. I have middle written down, but it's not middle. It is center of the trail. He says the music is there at the center. That's the source. And these coordinates, this path, that is how to get there. And I would like to take a second, because I think that center is the most appropriate word here. And I think they use it on purpose. Remember that we are not Wizard of Oz themed, but Wizard of Oz semi-entangled. I think that the trail that they are walking is not a straight path. I think the best way to envision it is a curve, like the yellow brick road. And what Daryl is saying is that in the middle of that curving, spiraling path is the music. And that is the way forward. Because going back, that's not going to work. The center, though, that is where you should be headed. And also, remember that Teddy is like the main person that has been fighting to keep going forward. He's obsessed. The music stops at one point and he's telling people, I miss the music. I want the music back. I want to see what's ahead. He's willing to literally risk their lives. And he does not care who lives and who dies. He wants to see what's at the end of that trail. So that is where Teddy's headspace is at. Anyways, despite that being where Teddy's headspace is at, they all do agree that they need to try to go back home. They cannot keep going forward like this. So they try to turn around, despite the fact that Daryl says, I don't know how to do that. And the music changes. It's not music anymore. Not really. What they're hearing is like an insanely loud feedback on the atmosphere, like from the earth, the same way the music had come from. This is so loud and so in their brains that they are like rocking forward. They are struggling to walk and focus and stay upright. They do manage to keep walking for a bit, and then they come to a roadblock. This roadblock is one of the few notes I have written down about the movie. I have a couple of things written down. One is the part where the two ladies are being like, a terrible tragedy has happened. And I'm like, no, Sherlock. The other one is noting that like they should have turned around a long time ago. It is too late at this point for them to just turn around. The last thing is this scene, this roadblock that they come across. What they come across, my exact words are, Jesus, the scarecrow scene. What they come across is the body of the dead sister sibling from earlier. And she is dressed up like the scarecrow from Wizard of Oz. Like I said, not so much a theme, but like a Wizard of Oz entanglement that is traveling through the movie with them. And this is one of those places where it's sort of more obvious and in your face. So the woman is there as a roadblock. She is dressed up like the scarecrow from the Wizard of Oz. She is propped up on like a stick or whatever. Her leg, since it's no longer attached to the part of her body that it's supposed to be attached at, her leg is like attached to the side. Whoever put her up there is like, hey, let's just detach it here. Yeah, she's tied to a pole and she's in the middle of the road and there's no way beyond her on this road. I said earlier that there's really only the one gory scene, and I did mean that. This scene where she's dressed up like the scarecrow is not gory, but it is a little jacked up. I will admit that. At this point, the crew and characters agree that the scene that they are looking at is really messed up, and they take it as a sign that they did not turn around. So they are sort of scrambling to figure out what to do here, how to handle it, where to go. Everyone except for Teddy, who has found sort of a path off of and away from the scarecrow. And the scarecrow, behind it, there's no way, there's no more path there. They have come to a dead end. Teddy sees a path like, here's the scarecrow. He sees a path that sort of does like this, and that's where he's trying to climb to. While people are having these discussions and while Teddy is trying to still be stuck in his obsession with the center of the trail, Daryl sees that one of them has put a machete like in the ground. They've like jammed it down there, and he uses that to cut his binding, reminding that Daryl is the brother sibling who did the leg thing earlier. Here I kind of call BS that like no one is noticing that he's cutting his own binding. Not only that, like he cuts because his arms are tied behind his back, right? He gets that cut off, and then he gets in the vehicle that they've had with them, sort of like a flat Jeep type vehicle. And he takes off with it. He like turns around and takes off. And no one notices that he is doing anything until the vehicle leaves. And like granted, I have never been faced with something like this. So I guess maybe in that moment when I'm slowly losing my mind, I would not notice that my prisoner is getting away. But like I guess to tally a bit, stick with me on this. Don't call ghosts. Don't go outside in the dark when spooky stuff is happening. And if you are facing down a corpse crow, make sure that your prisoner isn't getting away. At this point, the wiki says that the group realizes they're going the wrong direction. And the fact that there's like a deadfall or no path beyond the scarecrow, I guess handles that. But I had a thought here. In the scene, people are largely taking the scarecrow as the main roadblock. And they are taking that to mean that they have continued forward instead of going back. And I feel like that's not the case. I feel like it's whoever put the scarecrow there could have easily put it behind them or in front of them or in whatever direction that it thought that they were going in. But they are, they've been crawling towards absolute insanity for a while now. And after Daryl leaves, they really are all kind of losing it. The group is trying to decide which direction to go in. And they've decided that they were still traveling north because back home should be south, and that they are no closer to home than they were before. Like, my thoughts aside, that is where the crew stands. They start arguing about directions, and here again, I feel like in this scene there's a lot that the audience can sit and stew on that maybe the people in the movie wouldn't have the frame of mind to. Aside from the fact that like the scarecrow could have been placed in any direction, aside from the fact that like their compasses haven't been working, they wouldn't know. Despite the fact that they can't effectively turn around or go forward, I feel like the path is not the path that they think it is anyways, right? Like, they don't have a way to tell which direction that they're going, and the path is going to send them where it wants to, regardless of what direction they think they're going in. But it's this whole like muddy mess because they're relying on coordinates and like north and south in a place where none of that matters. None of it is relevant. None of it is important, right? But at this point, they managed to get Teddy down off of his path. And Sai, the forest expert, decides that despite not knowing which way they're going, despite the fact that the trail's going to take them wherever it wants to take them anyways, despite not having any like reliable way to really navigate this part of whatever universe that they have like slipped into, Sai decides he doesn't want to go north, he doesn't want to go south. Clearly none of those ways work. He wants to go west, and he's not going to do it alone. He's going to take Liv with him. And Liv is the random movie theater employee, in case you forgot. She tries to argue. She's like, no, I want to go with Teddy. I want to go where he's going. I want to go forward. But Sai is not having it. He basically takes her at knife point. He's like, I don't care what you think. I don't care what anyone else says. If anyone wants to fight with me, I will fight with them. And he's going where he's going to go with Liv. So the group splits into two. We have Sai and Liv, and then we have everyone else. Everyone else being Teddy, our main character, his wife, Melissa, Walter, the video dude, and intern Joe. They split up the supplies, and they spend a moment showing them, being like, this person gets the water bottle, this person gets the extra tent, this person gets whatever. And they split up, and the POV starts being split between them. The big group tries one more time to go south. The next scene, they decide to make camp. The big group decides to make camp. And the next morning, we have a brief scene with Teddy and Melissa. Teddy is at the door of the tent, and he's about to leave. Melissa wakes up, and she starts talking to him, and she's clearly not all the way awake. She's, like, mostly asleep still. Asleep still enough, or, like, tired enough still, that her eyes aren't even really open and looking at him. But she's telling him about a dream that she had. And she's telling him that she dreamt they were stuck on the trail forever. She says, I dreamt that the trail became our home. And she goes into a little more detail. From the sounds of it, it was not exactly a pleasant dream that she's having. I imagine that none of them are really having super pleasant dreams at this point, much less like real rest. Remember, they are slowly losing their minds. Whatever they still have left in there is not a lot, and it's loose. It's coming unraveled as they are like stuck on this path. And it's hard to blame them with some of the stuff that they've seen so far, but that is where we are at. So Teddy listens to Melissa talk about her dream, and he gets her back to sleep, and then he leaves. The camera shows him going up this path that he found earlier by like the deadfall, by the scarecrow. The big group that was 4 people wakes up a bit later to Melissa screaming. She wakes up and her tent is empty, and she says, that is it. I just know that Teddy is gone, and we as the audience, we know that Teddy is gone. That is that. From here, the POV switches to Sai and Liv. That is the forestry expert and the random movie theater employee. They are just sort of walking through the forest. We see they're not really doing a whole lot, but Sai is trying to teach Liv some like forest survival type things. In one scene, he has her like holding up a knife to like line up objects. I don't really know what this is supposed to do. I can guess. I guess it's supposed to work in the face of like the compasses not working or whatever. I don't really know though, and they don't really tell us. What they decide to do next is they start talking about the berries that Sai told everyone not to eat earlier in the movie. And they like come across some of them, and Sai explains to Liv that the berries are poisonous, but back in college he took some. And what they will do first is that they will get you really, really high and then cause like rashes and become poisonous. And Liv convinces him that they should eat some right then and there. That they should eat some of these berries and have a good time while they're walking through this path and trying to find their way home and having a fairly miserable time of it all. He agrees, and so that's what they do. They take the berries and they get really high, and they start wandering through the forest, which even they agree is like a bad idea. They're like, we should not walk around. We're gonna get lost. This is a bad idea, but they do anyways. We see Sai ask Liv if he can kiss her, and she's like, she says no, but she says it in the most like duh way possible, which is kind of a sick burn, and we see that on Sai's face. The next important thing that we see from them is that Sai tells Liv, well, he asks her, have you had any like dark thoughts or urges or anything like that? And she says no. And he says that he has. At this point, he admits that he's been thinking about doing some very horrible things to her for like hours now. And he tells her, I need you to tie me up. I need you to finish this for me, or I'm going to act on it. And he says, even if I beg you at the end, even if I change my mind, I need you to follow through. So she does. She ties him up, and he tells her, don't use the knife. I don't want my blood on that knife, which seems like a weirdly specific thing, but I guess it's hard to judge their decisions when I've been telling you this whole time that they are crawling towards insanity. And Daryl is beyond that. And Sai has hit that point where he's just sort of lost it. And he's telling Liv this. Liv listens to him. She does tie him up. She agrees not to use the knife. She agrees to snap his neck. And I guess another reminder that we are in a horror movie. She is not particularly fast about it or super good at it. It's not like a gross lingering scene, but it's not super fast either. I definitely cringed a bit at the scene, but she does it and she carries on by herself. After the next scene, after we like see the next scene happen, and we see like her walk off, and then it switches to the other group of 3 people. This group is about to hunker down for the night, and they find this bag of candy that the folks had found kind of earlier in the movie. And it's like a bright point for these 3 people. They're like, yes, I can't believe like we forgot about this while we were divvying up supplies. And they are really excited about this. They are eating the candy, and intern Jill goes to like reach her hand in to get more, but she is basically like grabbed and slapped away by Melissa, who was Teddy's wife. Melissa stops her, and intern Jill has this look on her face like, what are you doing? Why are you being so rude to me in particular? But Melissa tells her, we have a really long road ahead of us, and I think that we need to ration what we're eating. We get the sense that this is like the last of their food, but they don't really say that outright. They don't really talk about the food a whole lot as they're divvying up supplies. Anyways, they go to sleep, and we pan to overnight, and intern Jill is like gobbling down candy on impulse. Which I feel like we can all relate to a little bit. You are like told no to something, someone's like, no, you can't have that candy, and then no one's around, and instead of eating like one more piece, you eat the whole bag. And so that is what intern Jill did. And we pan again to the next morning, and this time they are walking along a path. Melissa, Walter, the camera dude, and intern Jill. And what we see is intern Jill apologizing for just her life. She is over and over again being like, I'm sorry. And Melissa and Walter are just not listening. They are outright ignoring her, and just like walking quickly forward. And intern Jill is again like trailing behind, and they are not even looking at her. Well, at this point in the movie, I'm thinking to myself, because this is Ira, how this would go. I can relate to intern Jill at this moment. I'm thinking to myself, all of this is fine. Like, let them be mad and let her apologize for a while. And then eventually, when they're on the path, she will feel less guilty and they'll be less mad and they'll work it out, which I understand now is silly of me because, like, they're not in a normal situation. They are literally losing their minds. I keep telling y'all that they are losing their minds, and this is something I thought about in the movie, and yet I was like, it'll be fine. Just, like, let them settle down. They don't settle down. Instead, they come to the part of a road that has, like, a cliff. It's like it goes kind of like, not like a bridge, but the trees cut away and there's like a big cliff and a big drop. And intern Jill lets her RSD thoughts win. She is tired of feeling that. And she walks off the cliff into oblivion, like, bye, Felicia. Walter and Melissa don't even look back at this point. They never question what happened. They are totally fine with intern Jill yeeting herself off the cliff out of guilt. They eventually make camp, and Melissa wakes up alone again. But this time, instead of, like, screaming, she actually leaves her tent to go find the person that she's looking for. Well, not tents, they're, like, sleeping on the ground, but whatever. Like, she goes to look for him, but her husband, she just screams her head off. Anyways, she finds Walter, and Walter is not alive anymore. Walter is sitting on the ground, like, against some rocks, and there's the camera, like, you know, in front of him. On his lap is a sign that says, like, watch the video. And his wrists have been slit. Walter is no longer of this world. Melissa sort of mourns him for like a minute, but then she sets out to watch his video. They do show sort of on screen his video and like what it says. I don't find it to be particularly important though. What I find the next important thing to be is that after the video that Melissa watches, she is now entirely alone. She picks up a walkie-talkie that they had in their supplies. And this is not the first time we see these walkie-talkies. But she picks it up and Teddy has the other one. In this scene, we see Teddy holding the walkie-talkie because it like statics through. He can tell that someone is trying to talk to it through it. And he hears Melissa's voice a little bit. And we see on like the other end, Melissa holding it and talking to him. We see her entire speech to Teddy through her POV. We can tell that they can't really hear each other. So the main takeaway in this section is that Melissa tells Teddy that if he had just woken her up, she would have come with. If he had have just stopped and like asked her, she would have come with to explore the rest of the trail with him. That like being with him was always going to be more important than going home. And I think maybe this is like one of the saner moments that we get. I think in this section, Melissa is she's having a moment to herself. She has witnessed people disappear, die, walk off cliffs, become scarecrows. She's lost on this trail. She had the dream about it becoming their home. She knows she's not going home. So she says, I could have at least come with you. I could have at least been with you at the end of this instead of us being separated. At the end of this sort of conversation that they have, which isn't really a conversation because it's just her talking to the walkie-talkie, but at the end of it, we do hear a male voice, but it is not Teddy's voice. It is Daryl's voice, and she sort of realizes this after a second of him speaking, and he's been hanging out in this little cave that is behind Melissa. And he comes out and she tries to run away from him. She tries to make an effort to survive, but she does not. Daryl claims his second victim. Next, we get to see what Liv has been up to again. She has largely just been wandering around the forest until now, but she does come across Daryl. And this is worth a moment, if you will allow me another one. These folks have absolutely no sense of direction or really time. And I have hounded on this throughout the discussion of the plot that the directions are not working the way they want directions to be working. And the trail is not designed in the way that they think the trail is designed. There is no north, south, east, and west. We have the path that they set out to take, the path that the trail is kind of making them take. Again, I'm convinced that it's like a spiral and not front to back. And they are circling around each other, kind of literally. They're finding each other despite spreading out in what they feel like is separate directions. And the trail also has them having like murderous, crazy thoughts about each other. I don't think any of this is on accident. I'm also thinking here about the fact that a lot of the bodies were never recovered from that original exodus from Friar. And I think that this is kind of a hint about what might have happened there. But yeah, Liv comes up to Daryl and stabs him in the neck with the knife that Sai said he didn't want his blood on. With just like an interesting tidbit for you. Take it however you want. So yeah, we have Walter dead, and then we have Melissa dead, and then we have Daryl dead. That's our body count in like this last scene and a half. And Liz is then just kind of hanging out. Liv is like eating berries, laying down on the ground. They're like spread across her chest, and she is having like the time of her life. We come back to Teddy. Teddy has been walking along this trail. He has been doing his own thing. We come back to him actually crawling along the trail. He's not even walking anymore. And he's gotten to the center of the trail. We know he's gotten to the center or to the end because it's not just wilderness anymore. He has come across a building. What kind of building? I don't want to say that this is the heart of the movie. I think the heart of the movie is somewhere a while back. I think it's maybe the leg scene, or maybe the scarecrow, or maybe the fact that like Liv doubles back on Daryl and Melissa. It's somewhere in there. But I do think that this is a point in the movie where the audience is expecting answers. You have gotten to this point and you think he's gotten to the end, he's gotten to the center, we're going to see something, we're going to find something, there's going to be some sort of cathartic anything. What he finds though is a movie theater, which feels random, and it is random. But the movie theater is not just any movie theater. It is the theater that we see at the beginning of the movie. The theater back in the town of Friar, where they started this whole thing. At this theater is a man that sort of like in the script and in the wiki and stuff is called the usher, and he's dressed like a theater usher that might take you to your seats and stuff. The usher invites him in, and I think that we have seen the usher earlier in the movie, and it's not something that I can pinpoint to anywhere specific, but you are not surprised when you see him. He's not as sudden of a character as you would expect him to be. You kind of feel like he's been there at other points. but the usher forces Teddy into one of the theaters. And in this theater, Teddy is the only person there. It like shows all of the seats and stuff, and he's the only person that's in the seat. The usher shuts the door and starts the movie. On screen is footage of Melissa, Teddy's wife. And the official sort of plot point here is that his wife has been transported by the usher into a hellish landscape. And this is something that I feel like is a lot of internal knowledge that the audience doesn't actually get, because it's not as if we see that, but we do sense that the usher, he plays some sort of role. We just don't get on screen like told to us everything that is. Anyways, Teddy starts screaming at what he sees on screen, and while this is happening, the like bright lights of the movie are sort of flashing, and he's screaming, and we get glimpses in the seats around him of like ghosts or like undead or like ghostly skeletons, of people that we can assume are or have been trapped in the theater with him. The picture on the screen itself is oddly cheesy looking for what we see in the rest of the movie. Like, we don't see a lot of cheesy effects or like bad CGI or anything, but like on screen is Melissa, and we see like her face and her head and some of her body, but there's also like sticks and stuff for like arms, and she's in this like a wasteland of like fake fire around her and like in a desert. It's just, to me, like really strangely portrayed. Like, it doesn't fit with the vibe of the entire rest of the movie. And that is it, friends. That is the end of the movie. We end on that. There is no answers about anything. I feel like I have more answers about the trail and the path and like the way that functions than I do this final scene of the movie. And a lot of the criticism of Yellow Brick Road does come from this final scene, which I know that some people viewed it as like a twist. I don't view it as a twist. I don't know. I think it is what it is. It's just that final scene is so different than like the rest of the movie. Anyways, we have come to the end of the plot of the movie, which means it is time for my review. Are you ready? Because I'm ready. Okay. So, the going through the plot of this was a little longer than I planned it to be. I had known going into something like The Night House that it was going to be longer, because that movie was just absolutely stacked. And if you have since watched that movie, tell me in the comments of this or that one if you feel like maybe what I missed or didn't miss or hit, because I'm really curious about that one. Anyways, this one I didn't feel like it was stacked. I felt like this sort of slow crawl, like I've been calling it, would lead to something shorter, but I think it's been a lot longer than I had planned. So that's been a little bit surprising to me for that. Anyways, when I first watched this movie, it instantly shot itself up to one of my hands down favorite psychological horror movies. I have recommended it to people for years now, and I stand by that I think it is worth watching. I will admit, because like I purposely sought out this movie to make a video about for you guys, but I will admit that the second time watching it, I'm not super sure that like it remains at number one video, and maybe that's because other like really stellar movies I've watched just recently, but I do see what I saw in it, and I do still agree that these things make the movie worth watching. It is this wild, completely unexplained ending, whether it makes sense or not. It's this uncontrollable, like slow descent into madness. You want to stop it, but you can't. You can see them losing their minds, but there's nothing you can do about it. And you can see what they cannot, and for what? For nothing. Like, no one gains anything, right? It's all for some stupid trail. And I like hopeless horror movies. If you don't like totally hopeless horror movies, this might not exactly be for you. But I like them. I also like that it's not found footage, but it is filmed, and it's got that vibe to it. It's not framed as anything other than what it is, and I appreciate that about it a lot. Like the movie Grave Encounters, it's got that framing at the beginning of like, well, they were going to like make this movie, and that's why we found the footage, and then it doesn't come back around. Like, it's not about that. So that to me was just an irritating framing. But this one does not have that. It has a lot of shining moments to it. And I think it's worth watching if you can stomach those sorts of things. But that is all I got. That is the plot, and that is my thoughts on it. And we are done. As always, if you have stuck around, thank you so much for listening to me ramble on for far too long about this movie. I genuinely appreciate it and love you. And if you are interested in more, be sure to come back to check out and hit all of those like and subscribe buttons. And if you have thoughts on something that I should watch next, leave that comment down below as well. All right, bye.